Have you ever watched the person you love most in the world become a complete stranger right before your eyes? I saw it happen in the faint blue glow of a phone screen at 2 in the morning. My wife Sarah was asleep next to me, her breathing steady, the picture of innocence. But her phone, which she'd started guarding like a state secret, lit up on her nightstand. A single text message from a name I didn't recognize. "Can T stop thinking about tonight?" My heart didn't just break. It turned to ice in my chest. I stared at the ceiling of our Chicago brownstone, the city lights painting faint stripes across the room, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. The real horror wasn't the message itself, but the chilling realization that this was only the tip of the iceberg. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. For 10 years, Sarah was my world. We built a life together from nothing, sharing dreams over cheap takeout on the floor of our first tiny apartment. I thought we were invincible, but over the last few months, a subtle chill had crept into our home. It started with her working late, then girls' nights that became more and more frequent. She'd come home smelling of a perfume I didn't recognize and a vague, dismissive coldness in her eyes. When I'd ask about her night, her answers were clipped, annoyed, as if my questions were an interrogation. She'd angle her phone away from me, her fingers flying across the screen, a tight, secretive smile on her face. Receipts for expensive dinners for two at places like Alinea or Gibson S Bar and Steakhouse would appear in her purse, which she'd laugh off as client meetings. I was a fool. I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored the screaming alarms in my gut. She made me feel like I was the crazy one, paranoid and controlling for even asking. The woman I married, the warm, loving partner I knew, was being replaced by this cold, manipulative stranger who looked at me with something bordering on contempt. The villains, her, and this mystery person, felt untouchable, wrapped in a cocoon of lies I couldn't seem to penetrate. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday. I came home early from a business trip, wanting to surprise her. I walked into our home on North Orchard Street, and I heard them, giggles from the bedroom. Not just any giggle, but that deep, throaty laugh she only let out when she was truly, unguardedly happy. A laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. A man's voice murmured something, and she laughed again. My blood ran cold. I stood there in the hallway, my suitcase handle digging into my palm, paralyzed by the sound of my world collapsing.
Ow.
I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I just quietly backed out the front door, closed it without a sound, and walked down the street to a little diner. The Golden Apple. I sat in a booth, the red vinyl cracked and worn, and I just stared into a cup of black coffee as the rain streamed down the windows. That was the moment the loyal, loving husband died. In his place, something cold and strategic began to form. From that day on, I became a ghost in my own home. I played the part of the oblivious, loving husband, but my mind was a steel trap, recording every detail. I installed a keylogger on her laptop and a voice-activated recorder under our bed. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop who operated out of a dusty office in the Loop. The evidence started pouring in, each piece a fresh stab to the heart. Texts, emails, hotel bookings at the Peninsula Chicago, right on Magnificent Mile. The photos the PI sent were the worst. Sarah, my Sarah, kissing him in a dimly lit hotel bar, her hands tangled in his hair. But the man in the photos wasn't a stranger. My stomach dropped into a black hole of nausea. It was my twin brother David, my own flesh and blood, the smug golden boy brother who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, the coward who was now sleeping with my wife. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it was almost biblical. I didn't confront them. Oh no, that would have been too easy, too merciful. They deserved more than a shouting match. They deserved to have their world dismantled, piece by piece, just as they had dismantled mine. I started setting the traps. Legally, I met with the sharpest divorce attorney in Chicago. We found out Sarah had been draining our joint savings account, funneling money into a private account under her maiden name. My lawyer just smiled. "She's making this very easy for us," he said. Socially, I began planting seeds. I forwarded the anonymous emails with the photos to our parents' closest friends. To Sarah's boss, to the board of the charity she so proudly sat on, I made sure the sender was untraceable. The whispers started, the sideways glances at family dinners, the sudden chill from her colleagues. She was being isolated, and she had no idea I was the one pulling the strings. The final act was planned for our anniversary party. Huge catered affair at our home, with all our friends and family, everyone who mattered. David was there, of course, playing the role of the supportive brother-in-law, a smug grin plastered on his face. Sarah was radiant in a new dress, no doubt bought with my money. She floated around the room, the queen of her castle, completely unaware that her reign was about to end in fire and ash. At the peak of the party, I stood up to make a toast. I raised my glass. To my wife Sarah, I began, my voice steady, and to my brother David, I've discovered you to share a very special, very intimate bond. I let that hang in the air. Then, I pressed a button on a remote. The large television screen on the wall, which had been showing a slideshow of our happy memories, flickered. It was replaced by the PI's photos. Sarah and David at the hotel bar, Sarah and David checking in. A final damning shot of them walking out of our front door, her in his arms. Just hours after I had left for my business trip, the room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Sarah's face went from a triumphant smile to a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. She started shaking, her wine glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the hardwood floor. David looked like a cornered rat, his face pale and sweating. Our parents stared, mouths agape. Her boss just shook his head and walked out. One by one, the guests started leaving, their faces a mixture of pity and disgust. I didn't say another word, I just watched her. I watched as her perfect world, built on a foundation of lies, crumbled into dust around her.
Ow.
The legal fallout was brutal. She lost everything: the house, the savings, her reputation. David was disowned by our family. They were left with nothing but the wreckage they had created. Tonight, months later, I sit in the quiet of my now empty house. The furniture is gone, the walls are bare, and the only sound is the hum of the refrigerator. There was a knock on the door a few minutes ago. I looked through the peephole. It was Sarah, looking thin and broken, the ghost of the woman I once loved. I didn't open it. I just watched her stand there on the porch, shivering in the cold Chicago wind, until she finally turned and walked away into the darkness. The silence she left behind is the loudest sound I've ever heard.